Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, by Marek Siek. As a student and educator with a learning disability, I would like to bring everyone's attention to a very important regulation, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Before IDEA, there was insufficient support for students with disabilities. Thankfully, this crucial law has since been established. Before I introduce IDEA regulation, I would like to make sure everyone understands what special education is. What is special education? Special education is the process by which students with special needs receive education by addressing their differences while integrating them as much as possible into the typical educational environment of their peers. In the USA and many other countries, children with special education needs are entitled by law to receive services and accommodation to help them perform to the best of their abilities. What is Individual with Disabilities Education Act? The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act is a law that makes available a free, appropriate public education to eligible children with disabilities throughout the nation and ensures special education and related services to those children, supports early intervention services for infants and toddlers and their families. The history and purpose of IDEA. IDEA was passed for the first time in 1975. At the time, it was called the Education for All Handicapped Children Act. Before, IDEA was common for states to place kids with disabilities in separate schools or in separate classrooms away from their peers. Their education was often poor and underfunded. Kids with learning and thinking differences typically didn't receive the appropriate help they needed to thrive in school. Congress passed IDEA to change this. Around the same time, other laws also were passed to improve lives of people with disabilities. Over the years, Congress has updated these laws several times. IDEA's last update was in 2004. 6 principles of IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Principle 1, provide free appropriate public education. Principle 2, the IDEA requires that a student must receive an evaluation. Principle 3, an IEP is an individualized written statement for each child with a disability that is developed, reviewed, and revised at least once a year by educators, parents, and students, whether appropriate. Principle 4, the IDEA requires that children with disabilities are educated with children who are not disabled. Principle 5, the IDEA is very specific about what schools must do to ensure that parents have the opportunity to be active participants in each step of the special education process. Principle 6. The right of children with disabilities and their parents are protected and that they have access to the information needed to effectively participate in the process. Who qualifies? Children between ages of 3 and 21 who meet the eligibility criteria in one of the 13 qualifying disabilities and who require special education services because of the disability can qualify for services under IDEA. Pros and cons of IDEA. What every parent and educator should know about the regulation. It provides a free and appropriate public education. This law ensures that children with disabilities are evaluated according to their individual needs. Individualized education program, these are legal documents that establish goals, accommodations, and modifications. Resources limitations. That is the biggest cons, the same as the lack of adequate funding and lack of political will, when the success of IDA is tied to the overall political will to adequately fund public schools, which can be lacking. In conclusion, equal access to the education is a fundamental right. Thanks to IDEA, students across America are provided with accessible education. Federal law guarantees students with disabilities a free and appropriate education.